Hello everyone, we're Kirsty and Kate from K&K Legal Consulting. We help businesses with their legal needs, whether that's contract drafting, GDPR advice, trademarks, all of the business law elements. And today we're going to talk to you about, is your business legally compliant in the age of AI? I can't get my words out today. So during this talk, we're going to help you understand how to use AI safely, ethically, and legally. As you know, AI is now part of our everyday business life. It's growing, whether that's marketing, admin, content creation, or anything else. Most businesses are now utilizing AI in some shape or form. And lots of people haven't considered the legal requirements, shall we say, of using AI. So you need to have that legal awareness because failure to do so can cause some quite big risks in your business with regards to data protection, copyright infringement, also misleading your clients in terms of your use of AI and the output of AI. So today we're here to talk to you about how your business can stay compliant, but also enable you to remain confident when you're using AI in your business.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about the first category, shall we say, which is data protection and privacy. A lot of you will already have an understanding of protecting data in your business because of good old GDPR. So AI has thrown a bit of a spanner in the works in terms of what you need to be aware of and what you need to think about when using personal data, especially with AI tools and software. So, um, a big thing at the moment is people putting personal data into AI tools. And now I'm not saying that you can't do that. It's not illegal. There's no reason why you can't do it, but you need to make sure that you're putting the correct steps in place to be able to do it. And that is allowing people to know that you're using their personal data in those AI tools. So if you don't have permission from whoever's personal data it might be, then definitely do not put it into AI tools. As we know, AI tools have a bank of information that they share, they use to train their software and their tools. And that information can go anywhere. At the moment, nobody's really sure of the pathways that AI is opening up in terms of data sharing and information sharing. So the safest option, if you do not have permission, don't do it. If you do have permission, then you still need to be very careful about what you're doing and that you have the right consent to be able to do what you're doing. So another thing to do is check which AI tool you're using as to where that data is stored. So if you are putting personal data into AI tools and you've got permission to do that, you need to make sure that you know where that data is being stored. So the servers that the software is using, and whether that's UK, EU, or further afield. And then you need to be transparent about that with the people's personal data that you're inputting into the software. You need to update your privacy policy to reflect any AI use. So that is, whether or not you are putting personal data into AI or not, you should have something in your privacy policy about how you're using AI in your business, for that transparency element. As we know, GDPR and data protection legislation is all about being transparent and using people's personal data in accordance with what you say you're going to use it for and in accordance with the legislation. So if you are putting personal data into AI and you have got permission to do so, you need to make sure you do a data protection impact assessment. At the moment, that is part of the law in the EU. We've got the EU AI Act, which you'll hear us talk about quite a lot in this talk. At the moment, there's no one piece of legislation that the UK has implemented solely on AI. It's touched on other pieces of legislation, but at the moment, we're falling behind in terms of putting, some legal framework out there governing the use of AI for businesses. So we would recommend, although there's no legal requirement at the moment, to put a data protection impact assessment in place and have that on record, especially if you're handling sensitive data. So that's that special category data such as health related data, political views, criminal records, all of that special category data. So yes, just really need to think about what is going into AI and whether you're using AI, you might not think you're using AI. A lot of us are using these AI note takers, and AI note takers inevitably have, personal data. So you need to be making sure that you are looking at the terms and conditions of the note taker, especially if you're using a free option, because free options tend to don't have the ability to lock down certain elements and restrict what that tool is doing with the data that it's holding on your behalf. So yeah, just really get thinking about the tools you're using and checking their terms and conditions, where the data is being stored, what happens with the data, can you control it, and putting data protection impact assessments in place and keeping that on record, especially if you're using sensitive data. Okay, so I'm just going to pass you back to Kirsty, who's going to talk about confidential and client information.
Absolutely. So obviously, no matter what industry you're in, there is inevitably going to be some confidential information that you hold on behalf of your clients and customers. So when it comes to what you do with that, you need to think about where you're putting that, as Kate's discussed. Now, obviously, any third party service, we use it for a lot. So any apps that we're using, note takers, even something like Canva or anything like that. So think about where this data is going. AI is always going to be a third party owned piece of kit. So they're not the owner of the data that you're putting in there. So you need to think about where that data is going, where is it sitting with that AI, and treat them as a third party person. So they're not a party to your legal relationship with you and your client. So you need to do your background information there. Never upload anything into AI that is confidential, sensitive, client files, contracts, unpublished work. Essentially, don't upload anything of your clients into AI without having the required permission, because like we say, AI will use it in different ways, and we don't know if elements of that is going to be spat out when someone else asks the question. So never upload anything into AI that is confidential or sensitive. You should also, when working with clients, if you're inputting data that a client owns or something that perhaps you've drafted for a client and you're assigning the intellectual property, you've actually given that to that client. So that is now client data. So you really need to specify in your contracts, your terms and conditions, terms of sale, whatever legal document you have that sort of governs that relationship between you, your client, and your customer. There needs to be clauses in there that gives you permission to use those AI tools. And get consent. That's what the contract is doing. It's asking your client to consent for your use of AI. And the AI clauses need to have some boundaries to them. So it's not a blanket policy of putting everything into AI. You'll need to drill down into them as to what you're using AI for and what information you can use, but also what information is legally theirs after it's been input into AI. So if you're using AI internally, just make sure that everyone that's working with you understands the obligations when it comes to sensitive data, confidentiality, intellectual property ownership. It's not just you, it needs to be your freelancers, your employees. Everyone needs to understand confidentiality in the same way. So just have those boundaries and awareness that anything that you do put into AI, one, you need consent, and two, you need to know what happens with that in terms of ownership.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to now talk about copyright and ownership. Now, this is a big issue with AI, and at the moment it's a very grey area, and we aren't really going to see the ramifications of copyright and ownership from AI generated content for years ahead, when case law gets brought to court, tested, legislation is implemented in the UK. So at the moment, we have to work with what we know in terms of the law, and that's, and what we know about AI, and AI is moving very fast. So it's very difficult for the legal profession to keep up with what's happening. But what we would say is that if you are using AI generated content for client work, you need to be very careful, and your intellectual property clause in your contract or whatever legal document you're using aligns with what you're doing in terms of the output of the work. So if you're using AI generated content and you're giving that to your client as a piece of work for them to use and they want to do something with it, unless you've put meaningful human input into that content once the AI tool has generated it, you aren't going to be able to claim ownership of copyright. And meaningful human input is a very broad statement. Well, what does that even mean? Practically, what is meaningful human input? And again, that is going to be something that will be argued in court at some point in time over a copyright issue. So meaningful human input from a practical perspective means you have to have done a lot to that content yourself once the AI tool has given it to you. And again, we can't really quantify what you need to do, but you need to change it substantially to hopefully have ownership of copyright. You also need to make sure that whatever platform or tool you're using, you can have ownership of whatever it gives you. Some tools and software will try and retain that ownership. So that's going to be you looking at their terms and conditions and understanding what you can and can't do with the content that it gives to you. And just trying to avoid copyright infringement yourself when you're using AI tools. I know a lot of, oh gosh, when AI first came out, I think it was ChatGPT, everybody was doing the Barbie in a box figures, and they were putting themselves as a Barbie in the box, and for various whatever work sector they were working in. So some were holding a laptop and a mobile phone, others it was very specific to the sector they worked in. Now obviously that Barbie in a box, you probably didn't own that content, and people were putting it out on social media and everywhere else. They may have used it, more broadly in their business for whatever reason. But unless you checked the AI tools terms and conditions, you'll probably find that, that ownership wasn't ever going to be yours and you did not own that content at all. So it's just about really thinking about, infringing copyright. So a lot of people probably infringed on Barbie's copyright when they did that for various reasons. Using prompts as well. Obviously, we all know that, to get a decent generated information out of AI, it's all to do with the prompts you put into it. So just avoid using other people, other designers in the style of those sort of words as prompts, because the likelihood is whatever it churns out is going to be infringing somebody else's copyright somewhere along the line. And ensure compliance with, I'm not going to talk about this too much, IR35, deemed employment status rules. You need to be thinking about why, what information it's giving you and why that could be infringing on you being deemed an employee in relation to, a lot of people are putting contracts and getting contracts out of AI. Now we've seen a lot of clients come to us and say, oh, I just got this clause out of AI, and or I got this contract from AI. Can you look at it for us? And I'm not going to talk about this too much because Kirsty and I could talk about it all day long about the issues that raises. But in particular, AI seems to think that freelancer contracts and self-employed contracts have employment related terminology in it, and we've seen it creep in a lot in AI generated contracts, and this could cause issues in your business if you use a contract that ChatGPT, for instance, has given you, and there's lots of terminology in there that could deem you an employee. So just be really, really careful. I mean, our advice would be do not do it. We've seen so many holes in contracts, it turns out, so many issues. It's only as good as the information you feed into it. And if you don't have a good awareness of contract law, of legal, liability, claims or civil actions, that sort of thing, and disputes, then you're probably not going to get a very good contract out of ChatGPT. So yeah. So I'm just going to pass you back to Kirsty, who is going to talk about accuracy, liability, and disclaimers.
Absolutely. So that's just touching base on what Kate just talked about. But we really need to think about what AI is kicking out. So is the information wrong, outdated, or biased? So we've seen wrong a lot when it, especially in our industry. Obviously, we're in the legal industry, and we see it. A lot of people come to us and say, "Oh, we've just run this through AI, and AI has suggested this clause," and the parameters around it aren't correct. One example was someone put in a bonus clause, and they said, "Oh, this is discretionary." And they thought that that made the bonus discretionary. Just because you label something discretionary doesn't mean that it is. It's how you calculate whether you set a formula in place. It's actually very complicated when it comes to whether a bonus is discretionary or not. So it kicked out that wrong information. The client thought that they had a discretionary bonus clause. They'd actually made it an obligation under the contract. So that's just one example. And I can tell you that myself and Kate have seen hundreds and hundreds of clauses kick out where something has really impacted what was actually in the minds of the parties. So it can be wrong. So you need to be very careful what you do in that regard. We also don't know whether it's outdated. Has it, is a new law come in? Has, there's been an industry change or a regulation change that AI hasn't picked up on? Because don't forget, it's pulling from various sources, but it's not from that day. It's going to take time to sort of tick over. And sometimes, as we all know, AI pulls from what information is available. Well, there could be 10 articles on the website on various websites, and one of those could have been wrong, and that wrong information would filter into your answer. So always fact check everything that you do with AI if it's got that sort of liability risk. It doesn't just happen in legal, it will happen in health. Finance. There's loads of industries where wrong information that you believe is right could actually have an impact on what you do and your liability there. There's also bias. Bias is talked a lot about in the EU AI Act, but bias is about, not having it make a decision based on what it thinks that it wants you to know. It's a really hard one to describe, but it needs to be neutral, and you need to feed the right information into it. Personally, I wouldn't use it to make any decisions on employment. There's one of the risks that you would talk about in the EU in that regard, and make decisions about, I don't know, who would be better for a promotion or something like that. It can create bias, and it really depends on the information you put in there. So personally, I wouldn't touch it for that regard. Um, when you're using AI in your services, in your products, you need to clarify who's responsible for verifying that the output is correct before it's put anywhere. So whether it lands on a website, is that responsibility with you to do that fact checking, that research, or are you putting the factual accuracy onto your client? And if you're putting it onto your client, it needs to be very, very clear that final proof is with your client, because lots of the clients will probably assume that you've given them a piece of work, you're the expert, and therefore it would be correct. You need to make sure that you use disclaimers, and you put information in your contracts. So what we mean by disclaimers is if it was us, we'd have a disclaimer on the website to say any of the content on the website may include AI if you're using AI. You'd put it in your any reports that you would produce. You'd put it in any email campaigns just along the bottom. You need to put your use of AI in your contracts, and that's where you would gain the consent. Just to make everyone aware. So everyone should be able to land on your website or look at a piece of work and know whether AI was used to generate it. And liability does rest with you. You're the owner of that piece of work. You've created it, regardless of whether you assign it to your client. Your client might very well believe that what they've got is accurate. So that liability is still with you. So if anything goes wrong with that piece of content or product or whatever that AI has been used for, the client's going to come after you. The customer's going to come after you. They're not going to come after AI because you're the one that sold it as a service. So you're the one that's input the output into the world for whatever purpose. So the liability is with you. And that goes again to, is the AI that you're using in that final deliverable or product, is it wrong? Is it outdated? Is it biased? Have you got a disclaimer in there to say that it's legally up to date or it's up to date as of today's date? All those essential elements are really important to consider to protect you in your business from issues with liability.
Yeah,
Over to you.
definitely. Okay, so next up is transparency and client communication. We've already touched on being transparent. And again, with AI use, it is all about being transparent. So you need to be upfront with clients about how AI supports your services, put something in your contracts, your terms and conditions, whatever legal document you've got with your client. You need to be clear about what you do use AI for and what you don't use AI for. Because if you're not transparent about it and the client later finds out that something they thought was created by you was actually created by AI, that could damage your relationship with your client. As we know, transparency, it builds trust. It's, it's one of those throwaway comments everybody uses, but it is true. If you're transparent with your clients, then they will trust you more. So yeah, you need to also, if you're using AI, avoid any misleading claims, like human only, or human created or created by hand, or anything like that that could be perceived that you created it solely if you didn't. If you did, absolutely fine to put statements like that. But if you know that at any point in time during that creation process you've touched on AI use or any AI tool to assist you, you can't make that claim. Um, and then just guidance internally, whether it's just for yourself, just as a checklist or something you can refer back to, or if you've got a wider team, whether that's because you subcontract work out or you've got employees working for you, make sure everybody understands how you as a business want to and don't want to use AI and make that clear. The best way to do that is have a use of AI policy that sets out exactly what you might use AI for, whether it's just for internal processes and internal use, or whether it's for client-facing work, and just sharing with the rest of the team about what they can and can't do. And then hopefully it means that you won't have any issues or disputes with clients around your use of AI. Okay, so Kirsty's up next with a good one: terms, policies, and contracts.
Exactly what we do. As you know, we draft a lot of contracts. We also review a lot of contracts. But lots of contracts out there at the moment probably don't include AI, or they're in the process of being updated to include AI. We're personally going through all of our templates on our website to add in those AI clauses, but it's a process. We completely understand that. And AI has sort of come in and taken over rather quickly. So now's the time to sort of sit back, take the time to review your legal documents, your internal documents, to check that you are working with AI in the right way. So Kate's obviously touched on having an AI use policy within the company. There is a handy use tracker on our website as well, which enables you to detail where you've used AI. So if you've created, I don't know, a guide, for instance, then you would have a back document sat in the background on your internal processes of what AI was used and the date that it was used and what AI actually kicked out. So having that in there is really helpful, especially as the law changes. And of course, if you're working with clients in the EU and that deliverable is going to end up in the EU, then obviously you've got that compliance with the EU AI I can't get my words out. Yeah, so obviously you've got more compliance issues there, and EU does have a greater burden. So it's not about whether you're in the EU, it's about whether your client's in the EU, but it's also about where that product or service is going to end up. If it's going to end up in the EU market, then you need the considerations of the EU AI Act. So review those documents, have that internal policy, be transparent about your use of AI, not just in your client contracts, but on your website. So have that within your privacy policy and make people aware that AI is used. It doesn't have to be in, size 50 font on your website and in red and, absolutely glaringly obvious, but it does need to be in there somewhere so someone can find it. You need to think about updating your intellectual property clause. Lots of service owners, copywriters, VAs, OBMs, all of those service providers will have an IP clause within their contract, or they should have an IP clause within their contract, and it's unlikely to cover AI at the moment. So do consider that ownership, the licensing element, and updating the IP clause. Like I said before, make sure you've got those disclaimers in. So a disclaimer on your website, in your reports, in your email management, anything like that. And look at limiting your liability. So think about what you want to be responsible for. So does your client know that AI has been used? Who is the person that's signing off? Is it you? Is it your client? Think about factual accuracy. Is it accurate at today's date, but not accurate in the future? So all of those individual elements can help to protect your liability and in turn limit your liability. So really think about how you want to bring it all together and just protect yourself more. So, okay.
Yeah, and also in another thing to think about is what your client can do with that work once you've created it. So if you know you've created something all by hand, you've not used any AI at all, you want to make sure that your content stays that way. Have something in your contract that prohibits the client from then putting that into AI for whatever reason they might want to. So having something clear in your contract that prohibits that will make sure, or hopefully make sure that that content remains, human created only and then isn't used or split out, or elements of it turned into AI and spat out to all sorts of people for all sorts of uses. So yeah. Okay, so ethics and reputation. So this AI and how we use it has really, really made us think about, ethically what we should and shouldn't be doing, or at least it should make you think about ethically what you should and shouldn't be doing. As Kirsty's already mentioned, AI can create bias, misinformation. It can come across in the wrong tone if you don't look at it once you send it out into the world, whether that's an email marketing campaign or a guide or whatever. It can create very misleading information that you do need to be really careful about. So again, as Kirsty mentioned, fact checking, making sure the tone's right, just having that eye, that human input over anything to make sure that you're not putting the wrong information out there, you're not putting a message that could become confused, or a different people look at it very differently. So just make sure you're reviewing it again for accuracy, inclusivity, and the tone is right, because it will reflect badly on your business if you put something out there without even thinking about it. It could be just something you're quickly trying to do. It's 4 p.m. on a Friday afternoon, you want to turn everything off and get started with the weekend, and you just throw something out there and don't really think much about it until you potentially got lots of complaints about the tone, or that the information you've put out there may not be actually very correct. So yeah, just always think about it. Don't be hasty. And think about how it could damage your reputation if clients do find out you've used AI to create content for them or a piece of work, or you've used it in your service offering and they weren't aware of it. And they later find out, how that will affect your business and create reputational damage. And also regularly check the back end of the AI tool in the settings to make sure that when there's been an update, that any information you might have ticked to say you don't want this to happen, so you don't want it to train the tool, or you don't want it to be shared, hasn't become unticked, because we do know that that does happen with updates. So continuously monitor the AI tools settings to make sure that they're correct and how you want them to be. And yeah, just the ethical impact of automation with creativity. Oh gosh, what was it I saw the other day? There was something where an AI tool had created like a version of you talking in a different it was your voice, but it was obviously an AI created character. that was being created, and it was, it was saying some things and the tone wasn't quite right, and it was very obviously AI generated, but there was just lots of flaws with it that I could see just by looking at it. And I don't know whether that's because I looked at it from a legal perspective or whatever, but it was just about the ethical impact of automating that sort of human version of yourself and how that could be perceived by different people, and that you shouldn't use AI to replace you. You should only use it to support you. And our advice would be just to think very carefully about how it is supporting you, and that it isn't, you're not using it as a shortcut. It might not be intentionally, but you aren't using it as a shortcut to replace what you should be doing and what you've said you're going to do with clients and other parties. Okay, so Kirsty's up next.
Yes. So the key takeaways, and one thing I've just thought about that's that perhaps we haven't made clear is obviously when it comes to permissions, you do have to have permission. An example is you're creating some content, perhaps you're creating a graphic, you've input your client's logo into that AI tool, and you haven't checked the settings in the back of the AI tool you're using. Have you then given ownership to AI for that logo? All right, that's a really extreme example that, that logo could then be used and made elsewhere. But what about if you do that with another piece of information or something that, is particularly sensitive? You've then given it to the world because you haven't gone into the back end and checked the settings. And when we say go into the back end and check the settings, at the moment, in most of the mainstream AI like GPT, when you go into the back settings, it's auto on that you can train. They can use your information to train. So don't assume that the settings are set up not to do that. The settings are very much in the favor of AI, and you physically need to go into the back end and do that. So
And
just so
sometimes it's not very easy to find either.
it's not. I think it was about a 6 or 7 step
Yeah.
route that you had to follow on one of
Yeah.
them that I looked at the back end of. So yeah, go into that, and if you can't find it easily, do your research. Don't use it. Don't think, oh, I'll do it another day, because we all know that another day could be 6 months down the line. So just some takeaways: don't share personal information or client data in AI tools, because we know, there's a sensitivity. There's also the fact that ownership could be in dispute. Always review AI content for accuracy and originality. That's where the fact checking comes in. Is it right? Who's responsible for that? Make sure that if you're using AI, your contracts, your policies, like your privacy policy, is updated to reflect your use of AI. You need to be transparent in that regard. Again, transparency and using it ethically. So you need to keep within the realms of what a normal business owner would be doing, and that is transparency. And stay informed as to AI law, because it's evolving. Kate's already touched on the fact that the EU, in our opinion, is miles ahead of the UK when it comes to law, because they've got something out a lot quicker than we have. And whilst there is some law around AI in the UK, we're taking it from various sources. It's not a UK AI Act. So we're likely to see something come into place, or the government drill down into other legislation and, make an impact on that. So it might come from multiple sources, but there will be changes. There will also be changes because problems start to occur, because people start bringing AI related cases into the court arena. They get litigated, and eventually that's how legislation changes, because those cases find the holes in the legislation. And ultimately, if it's big enough hole, then, government would look to fill that hole and change legislation. So it's ever evolving. AI is faster than we are. AI is faster than the legal field. So it's something that you really do need to keep on top of.
Yeah. Take responsibility for. Absolutely. Okay, so are you ready to use AI with confidence? We have been working hard all summer, haven't we, Kirsty?
Absolutely.
Getting and creating our AI toolkit, and we've also put the documents that are in the toolkit as standalone AI documents as well, in case people don't need the whole toolkit. So we've got guidance documents in there about ownership and copyright. There's a really great checklist in there that has some real world examples, so it really gets you thinking about how those examples correlate with things in your own business. We've got policies in there, disclaimers, contract inserts, lots of other things, some impact assessments. Kirsty, fill in the gaps. I
Yeah,
can't think of all
yeah,
of them.
there's lots in there, and obviously it does differ from the EU and the UK. So we have two AI toolkits, one for where you're based in the UK, but also the output of your deliverables is in the UK. And if you're using perhaps you're using, I don't know, a client has come to you from another country and it's in within Europe, then obviously there are greater obligations on you, and the output of delivery. So there are more obligations in the EU. So there are greater documents in there. You know, we've got supplier inserts for T's and C's. We've got the impact assessment, haven't we? We've
Yeah,
got the use tracker. They're all really
yeah,
helpful. You can buy them as a package, so you can buy them as the toolkit themselves, and you would include all of those documents. Or if you don't feel you need all of them because perhaps you're a smaller company, you can pick and choose those documents. Don't have to buy the whole toolkit. And we did that on purpose because we understand that everyone is different in their size. So
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it's yeah, very vast range of documents, isn't it? So yes,
it
if you have any questions at all or you want to contact us, you can contact us obviously on our email address, which is lawyers@kkbservices.com, and one of us will pick that up. Or you can head on over to our website. We've got lots of blogs on there around AI. You can look at all the documents that are in the toolkit, and obviously our library of all sorts of contracts, policies, everything. So you're not specifically looking for AI, but you're looking for a contract. As Kirsty said, we are gradually updating all of our templates on there to have some inclusion of AI clauses, but that's taking, if you see the amount of contracts on our website, you will understand why it's taking us so long. So we are doing that slowly, but not every template at the moment it does have that inclusion. So if you're looking to buy a template, then pop us a message if you want some AI inserts added in, and we can help you with that, no problem at all.
Absolutely. And all of our templates are available under the Legal Contract Store tab on our website, and our website is kkbservices.com. You can find all of those documents there. If there's anything that you want clarity over, or perhaps something is a bit niche and you're using AI in a different way to your average service owner or business, pop us an email. We're always on hand to answer any questions, and we want to make sure that you have the confidence to use AI. We're not anti-AI, it just needs to be used in the correct way. That's all we're saying.
Yeah.
So we hope you found this useful, and we look forward to hearing from you over on email or via our website.
Yeah. Thank you for listening.